CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly.
CBC News brings the story to you live.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canada.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 0 with partly cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. 11 Manitoba conservation officers are being deployed to the U.S. border to beef up security. This comes after repeated threats of 25% tariffs from U.S. President Donald Trump. Premier Wab Kinew says the province has been increasing the number of conservation officers ever since Trump was elected. He says those officers and members of the Manitoba Motor Carrier Enforcement Agency will help Mounties and Canada Border Service agents.
Just to be that eyes and ears in the first instance, if people do need that humanitarian assistance, to help out, while still, of course, keeping themselves safe first and foremost. And then again, to liaise with those other agencies who have the primary responsibility to secure the border.
Kinew says they'll be watching for suspicious activity in the area, but one of their main concerns is to watch for people not properly dressed for a Manitoba winter. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Poland to mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. He joined other world leaders for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The day honors the more than 6 million Jews and millions of other people murdered by the Nazis. Tom Perry reports from Poland.
Music amid the watchtowers and barbed wire that still stand at the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. Survivors like Tova Friedman here to mark the 80th anniversary of the camp's liberation from the Nazis, sharing stories of loss and horror.
I stood and watched helplessly as little girls from the nearby barrack were marched away crying and shivering to the gas chamber.
The ceremony was attended by dignitaries from around the world. King Charles, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Trudeau met before the ceremony with 2 Canadian survivors who say they're worried about a rise in modern-day anti-Semitism and hate. Tom Perry, CBC News, Auschwitz.
Israel says it got a list from Hamas confirming the status of hostages scheduled to be released this week. David Mencer is a spokesperson for the Israeli government.
The list from Hamas matches Israel's intelligence. So I can share with you that 25 of our hostages are alive and 8 have been killed.
Mencer says the 8 dead hostages were killed by Hamas. In total, Israeli authorities say there are about 90 hostages still being held in Gaza. Meanwhile, thousands of Gazans are returning to their communities in the north. As part of the release agreement, roadblocks that have been up for months have been removed, allowing the Israeli military to open a key route to the northern part of the territory. The Liberal Party, the Federal Liberal Party, is blocking Ottawa MP Chandra Arya from running for the leadership. But we've yet to hear the official reason behind his disqualification. Janice McGregor has your details.
Earlier yesterday morning, Arya seemed to still believe he was in the race, posting that he thought contestants should have more opportunities to debate. But then by noon, He was posting that he'd been informed that he wouldn't be allowed to enter and that he was carefully considering his next steps because, in his view, his disqualification raised serious questions about the legitimacy of the race and, by extension, the legitimacy of the next prime minister. Now, that is a serious thing to say about your own party, but it's also a serious thing for the party to tell someone that sits in their own caucus, greenlit to run, elected as an MP in the past, that they're manifestly unfit to be leader. The rules require the party's betters to tell the candidate their reasons and offer the candidate an opportunity to respond, but neither the party nor ARIA are sharing these reasons. We also don't know yet whether other candidates could be disqualified. The party has up to 10 days to vet candidates and confirm the final ballot. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, Jonathan Pedneau is returning to the federal Green Party. Pedneau was the party's deputy leader but resigned for personal reasons last summer.
The tragic, in fact despicable election south of the border of a president that is assuaging fascism and creating a threat to our way of living meant that I simply couldn't stand on the sidelines anymore.
He says he wants to resume the position of co-leader, but says the party membership has to vote in favor of that move. And finally, Coca-Cola is jumping on a nostalgic trend as it adds a new flavor to its lineup. Coca-Cola says it has developed an orange cream flavor, mixing orange and vanilla flavors in response to growing consumer demand. Coca-Cola Orange Cream won't be a permanent flavor, but will hit shelves in Canada and the United States next month. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app. In Winnipeg, we're seeing temperatures around 0 this afternoon with wind and a chance of flurries. In Brandon, a high around 0, and you can see flurries as well. Dauphin, a high of -2 with flurries and wind. Flin Flon, snow at times, a high around -9. Thompson, mainly sunny, a high of -16. And in Churchill, blowing snow with temperatures to -23.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1. It is Monday, January 27th. My name is Chloe Friesen. Thanks for spending your afternoon with us. Coming up on today's show, we'll learn how human-sized drones buzzing above Manitoba crops are helping farmers cut costs and increase efficiency. Also, Netflix just bumped up its prices for Canadian customers again. How do you feel about that? Do you ditch your service when it gets too expensive, or do you believe you're getting your money's worth? That's the topic of our call-in conversation coming up on Radio Noon. But first, Premier Wab Kinew announced new responsibilities for conservation officers at the Manitoba-U.S. border. We'll get reaction from the Reeve of Emerson Franklin. Well, as you heard in the news, Premier Wab Kinew wants Manitoba conservation officers help to increase security at the Canada-United States border. They will join the RCMP and Canada Border Services Agency in efforts to, quote, crack down on drug trafficking, stop unsafe crossings, and potentially save lives, end quote. Here's Premier Kinew speaking at the border just this past hour. He was joined by conservation officers out of Sprague and Manitou.
Everybody in Manitoba right now is paying attention to building up the relationship with the United States of America. We know that President Trump has brought in a bunch of new dynamics for our province and for our great country of Canada. And one of the important priorities that we have as the government of Manitoba is to send a strong message to people in our province that having a strong and secure border is important to us as Manitobans. Now, this is something that's a big priority for people here in the province because we want to have safe communities. But I also know that people in southern Manitoba have seen very, very serious situations that underline the fact that there's a humanitarian priority along the border as well. We know that just within the past few years, there was a very tragic story where a family from India lost their lives freezing to death trying to cross the border heading south. Just within the past few weeks, people coming north from the U.S. into Canada The reports being that they didn't have the gloves, mitts, and toques to be warm. And yes, we are Canadians, so I will say toques. Now, as part of our overall response to invest in jobs and to protect the Manitoba economy, we're also sending this message that asking our conservation officers to have that presence, to be that additional eyes and ears along the border, to be able to respond to that humanitarian priority, potentially save lives there. And if they do see anything of note, to feed that into the other law enforcement partners that we have at the federal level who help to secure Canada's border, such as CBSA and, of course, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Now here today we're with conservation officers out of Sprague and Manitou. And I'd also add that we're making this investment alongside additional resources for motor carrier enforcement officials who will be along roads and highways near the American border as well. And of course, we are investing additional resources into the Manitoba contingent of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So as Canadians and as Manitobans, we want to have a strong and secure border. And during these unprecedented times, it's important that we as a province put our resources forward to ensure that we're keeping you safe and we're keeping our economy strong. At the same time, throughout our history as Manitobans, we have welcomed people here from around the world fleeing conflict, fleeing famine, fleeing natural disaster. And when those situations arise and that humanitarian call is made, Manitobans have always stood up to answer. And so we're asking our conservation officers here to play a part in continuing those long-standing Manitoba values of being those friendly Manitobans who will extend that helping hand to people in need.
That was Premier Wab Kinew speaking about new responsibilities for conservation officers at the Manitoba-U.S. border. For reaction, we've reached Dave Carlson, the Reeve of Emerson Franklin. He's been on the line and listening to that tape there. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
So what's your reaction to what you just heard?
Well, I think it's a good thing. It is another layer of security at the border. It's nice having those extra eyes and ears and having that kind of mitigation. It's definitely welcome. I think it's welcome in the way too that we are showing the United States that we're taking our border security very seriously, and that it's basically a all hands on deck effort.
So, yeah, as you mentioned, Premier Kinew, he mentioned that this decision was partially informed by U.S. President Donald Trump, and that sits well with you as a response.
Absolutely, because you know what, I've lived on the border here a long time, and it can be pretty quiet, pretty desolate, and we've needed to take our border security a little more seriously. So to keep our community safe, to keep anyone crossing safe, our first responders safe, I think it's the right move, because there is drug smuggling, there is firearms smuggling, there's human trafficking, there's any kind of criminal element. So anything to mitigate those kinds of things are definitely welcome.
Now, Kinew identified 11 conservation officers as having this new role or having these roles added onto their jobs. What are your thoughts on that, of having conservation officers kind of step into that border patrol role in a sense?
Well, I guess it's a tool in the toolbox that they're using. I'm not sure what else they would do at this point. It's great to help the RCMP out. We know that they are overstretched at this time. Even our local detachments are overstretched, and securing this border is a huge job as well. So we have seen a surge of RCMP resources. So every bit helps, because it is a long border, and it is a border with a lot of wilderness areas, and the more the better.
For folks who don't know, what do conservation officers traditionally do in southern Manitoba? What is their role?
Well, if you're hunting out of season or hunting unsafely or anything like that, or you're fishing without a license, all kinds of things like that, they can deal with. I do believe they have powers around giving tickets for motor vehicle, operating a motor vehicle improperly. So I think they have a bit of a diverse role. So, and obviously now it's become far more diverse.
Does this feel like a natural transition for them, in your opinion?
Well, again, at this point right now, because of the resources that we have, I think using all available resources is a good thing. And I'm not sure how long term this will be or how this will go rolling out. Maybe there'll be a new department created for border security. I don't know, but right now I think it's what's needed.
What would you like the impact of this to be?
No tragedies. No one crossing the border and being undetected and losing their life as a result. Less calls for our emergency services to have to respond to where people have frostbite or any other kind of injuries. Any potential confrontations with our local community members with someone crossing the border. There's none of that. Drugs obviously is a big thing crossing the border both ways. If that's stopped, that's great. And again, with firearms being smuggled, anything that reduces criminal activity, anything that increases safety is welcome news to us.
Dave, I appreciate you joining us this afternoon, and I appreciate your perspective.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Dave Carlson is the Reeve of Emerson Franklin.
Manitoba's the kind of place that draws you in. Every day it's growing, it's changing. Just when you think you've got it figured out, though, there's something new to understand. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of the CBC Daily Podcast. This is Manitoba. I've covered the news from the rail line in Churchill to the border in Emerson, and it's talking about the local stories that help us understand this place. That's what This is Manitoba is all about. Find it on CBC Listen or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
It is 12:15. I'm Chloe Friesen. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 97.9 FM in Brandon, everywhere on the CBC Listen app. And hello to the folks watching on YouTube. I'm Chloe Friesen. Thank you for joining us. Still to come on the show, why more farmers are turning to drone technology to spray their crops. We'll hear more about that. And in our call-in conversation this afternoon, do you think Netflix is worth the cost, especially now that it is just bumped up that cost? You can call us and tell us if the rising streaming service costs make you pull the plug or just look elsewhere for your entertainment. Of course, you can call us 204-780-0893. That's just after 12:35. But if you want to text us already, 204-588-7355. Turning to your weather forecast, it's a balmy day across much of southern Manitoba, but still cold in the north. Risk of frostbite. We'll see temperatures above zero here in Winnipeg by Wednesday with a forecast of 3 degrees, but dipping back down to -9 by Friday. Winnipeg at the moment, -1, mostly cloudy. Brandon, -1 as well, mostly cloudy in Brandon. You're looking at a 30% chance of flurries this afternoon. Wind northwest 30, gusting to 50, a high of 0. And in Thompson, -17 degrees, drifting snow at the moment, mainly sunny, but with that wind chill feeling like -28. So there is that risk of frostbite for folks in Thompson. Drone technology is catching the attention of Manitoba farmers. Vendors selling human-sized drones were a popular feature at last week's Ag Days in Brandon. The number of vendors selling drones to farmers is on the rise. Dave Koop is the Chief Operating Officer of Green Arrow Tech, based out of Sperling, Manitoba, and we've reached him in Cochrane, Alberta. Hi, Dave.
Hi there, Chloe. It's great. Thanks you so much for having me.
So first, I use the term human-sized drones. Can you describe what these drones look like?
It looks like your standard quadcopter drone, only about 100 times bigger than what you're probably used to seeing. So they are about, when they're fully stretched out, they're probably about 6-7 feet across from the ends. And they weigh over 200 pounds when they're fully loaded. So human size is an apt description.
Okay, and they can still make it off the ground at that size.
Absolutely. That's what they're made for.
So what are they used for in agriculture specifically?
So specifically for agriculture, they're used for spraying applications. So they're used for a lot of things, from doing providing biostimulants to doing aerial spraying for herbicide, pesticide. There's not everything that's legal for spraying in Canada, but these are being used all over the world, and the technology is developing extremely fast.
So you can spray a field directly from the drone, or is it taking images to show where you need to spray?
No, it's spraying directly with the drone. So it has spray nozzles on built into the drone, and you're spraying about a 30-foot swath with it. And it's a very interesting tool that's changing some of the ways that we're going to be doing farming, especially as the technology continues to advance.
Interesting. Now, how much has business grown for you in recent years as this technology has been improving?
Well, the spray drones, about 2 years ago is when they finally became large enough to work on broadacre farming like we're using in Canada up here. And it's growing incredibly quickly. So in the first year, there was maybe a few dozen drones out there, and now we're looking into hundreds of thousands that are going to be coming out into the market. And it's a really interesting technology in that it has a fit on almost any size of a farming operation, and it's just going to continue to grow over the coming years. It's really advancing quickly.
And this has only been in the last couple of years that it's come onto the scene. What questions are you getting from farmers about drone use on their farms?
The number one question that we get is how it's going to work on my farm. And that's where it's been really interesting. We've had a chance to talk to literally thousands of farmers over the last few years. And what's been really neat to see is that it has a fit on almost any farm. We are talking anything from small farmers where someone's running a hobby farm where it's maybe a few hundred or 1,000 or to 2,000 acres where it can do all of your spraying. It can act as your primary spraying machine. We've talked with ranchers where they really like it for doing their fence lines and spraying their pastures because it can be really hard and or expensive to get equipment into those areas. And then for guys that are running large farms where you're running 6,000 acres plus, it's acting as a supplement to a high clearance sprayer, which is fantastic. It's a very inexpensive way to add more capacity to your farm. And it can also do some really great things that aren't always well served by our current machinery. So it's got to fit just about everywhere.
How would you compare it to the machinery that farmers have been using to spray their fields? I know there's the aerial spraying from planes, and what else? How would you compare it to what we've been using so far?
Well, a high clearance sprayer is your standard piece of spraying machinery on a farm, and it's not at a place right now with drone technology. We're not looking to replace that. Those machines still have a very big place on the farm. What a drone does is it adds a couple of interesting things to that mix. Is you can bring on extra capacity. Like I said, one thing with a high clearance sprayer is they do tend to be very expensive. Like you're looking at $700,000 to $1.3 million for a new machine, whereas a spraying drone you're looking at about a $50,000 investment to get into it. It's obviously not getting the same amount of capacity, but with 3 or 4 drones, you do start to match that amount. But what it does is it lets a farmer say, hey, I could really use a little bit more spraying capacity. It gives you a way to do that really cost effectively, but it also offers a lot of advantages to things that you weren't able to do really necessarily before on your farm. If you have a few days of rain and you want to go out and do some spraying, it gives you that capacity. Especially if you have a really nice looking crop and the guy doesn't want to get in there and put tracks into your field, it gives you that ability as well. Obviously, those things are available with spray planes as well, but something like this gives you control of it, the timing of it yourself. You don't have to wait for anybody to come in to do it for you. And it just gives you a lot more capacity. We would just like to say it's another tool in the toolbox for farmers.
When you're talking to farmers and when you're discussing bringing drones onto their farms as tools in the toolbox, you say, are they learning how to pilot and fly these drones themselves, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the great thing is that there's really not a lot to be done for that. Like the flying a drone is these drones at least is extremely easy. For the most part, what you're doing is you're telling it what area you want it to fly. So you're taking a look at a map. We definitely recommend going out and getting a map ahead of time with another drone to give you a really high resolution and up-to-date map. Guys can use your satellite imagery maps from Google, stuff like that, but they can be several meters off. But essentially, once you have that area, say, hey, I want you to go fly this field. We can mark off any obstacles that might be on there. If there's some power lines that are going through it or maybe a little bin yard on it, something like that. But once you tell that drone, this is the area that I want you to go fly, everything else is really done automatically. So you hit a button, it will go and take off. You can tell it when to come back and land, and then you're just filling it up, changing a battery, and away it goes again. There's no hands-on with it. And as somebody who's been flying drones professionally for 10 years, the best thing to do is to let the drone fly itself for this kind of a job.
Now, Dave, there's been mixed reactions to drone use lately, and this is aside from agriculture. So from the women's soccer scandal at the Paris Olympics to the Canadian water bomber that was damaged by a drone while fighting the wildfires in LA. Does that sort of negative news impact how people see drone use?
Oh, absolutely. And it's something like I say, like we've been in the drone business for 10 years, and it's one thing we've always tried to be very cognizant of what the using it properly. And again, like when we look at a drone is a tool, and it can be used well, or it can be used poorly. But things like that, it absolutely is. It's frustrating to see as somebody who's been in this industry for a long time, is because it's such a great advancement in technology that we can use really well. And it really, we really need to be using it responsibly. So it's something that it can affect us. But the thing that we're seeing too is that there's so much good from that we're seeing from these products that we're using as guys start to use them, and other farmers start to see their neighbors using them and talk about them in the coffee shop. It really is driving it, but the good definitely outweighs the bad, and it really comes down to the guys who are using them. And that's one thing that we've been lucky with so far, is farmers are a pretty good lot.
What do you see to be the future for drones in agribusiness? Like in the next 5 years, what do you predict?
It's going to be very interesting. Spray drones are the future of spraying, I believe, for agriculture. Like I said, from all of my time in the drone business, I've seen so many things come out of Silicon Valley, different technologies, different places of this drone is going to solve every problem that we had. And that's actually how we got into the drone business in the first place. In 2014, there was a huge wave of drones that were going to be doing NDVI and crop health analysis. And the way that it was sold to everybody, sold to us, sold to the farmers, was this is going to change the way that we farm. It's going to solve so many different problems. And the reality of it is the marketing hype was way bigger than what the actual efficacy of it was. We had pivoted our business within a couple of months because we just saw that it wasn't going to be solving problems. And when I look at this spray drone, like I say, I've seen a ton of different technologies inside of agriculture and outside of agriculture. And spray drones are the one thing. It is the right product. It is solving the right problems. It's hitting a good price point. It's easy to use. As these things become bigger, more autonomous, longer flight times, bigger tank sizes, we are going to get to a point, I think, in the future where we're going to see it start to replace those high clearance sprayers, and we can take those $1 million bills and we can start to decrease them quite a bit while getting more efficacy and having a lot more tools. So that's the way that it's going, and this is a legitimate technology. I'm so excited to be a part of it.
Well, Dave, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and yeah, I'm sure we'll stay in touch.
That sounds great. Thank you for having me, Chloe.
Dave Koop is Chief Operating Officer of Green Arrow Tech, based in Sperling, Manitoba, but today we reached him in Cochrane, Alberta. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen. Thanks for tuning in. We've got time for a bit of music here, and it's from a new playlist on Spotify that's highlighting Canadian musical gems, curated by none other than Canadian pop star Shawn Mendes. The list includes some of the usual suspects like Neil Young, Celine Dion, and Rush, but it also features one Winnipeg songwriter and his song about relationships in the digital age. From Chris Ulrich, here's Friends on the Internet.
When I saw you dancing there on my phone, I didn't feel so alone, and I daydreamed I was dancing with you. Yeah, we swayed to the song like we could do no wrong, no wrong. I wonder if I'd stayed. Maybe we'd meet somewhere on College Street, and I'd ask you if you wanted a coffee. I know a quiet spot if you wanna walk there, and maybe that's as far as we'll get. Maybe that's as far as we'll get. Friends on the internet. Friends on the internet. I try to make you laugh. You tell me all your favorite spots in town. You know I try to figure you out. I'd be tripping on the words in my mouth, yeah, and maybe that's as far as we'll get. Maybe that's as far as we'll get. we share a bottle of wine. You tell me all your fears and I tell you how it's been such a long, long time. I felt this way that you've been on my mind. Maybe that's as far as we'll get. Maybe that's as far as we'll get.
Out of Winnipeg, that was Chris Ulrich with Friends on the Internet. That song featured in Shawn Mendes, his playlist of quintessential Canadian music. Nice to see Manitoba represented on that list. You're listening to Radio Noon and our call-in conversation coming up shortly. Netflix just bumped up its prices for Canadian customers again. How do you feel about that? Do you ditch your service when it gets too expensive, or do you believe you're getting your money's worth? That's the topic of our call-in conversation. So you can call us just after our news at 204-780-0893 or text us right now, 204-588-7355. Your CBC local news is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're a +1 with mostly cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Close to a dozen Manitoba conservation officers are shifting duties to keep an eye on the border. Premier Wab Kinew says 11 officers and members of the Manitoba Motor Carrier Enforcement Agency will help watch for suspicious activity and help people who might not be dressed for winter. Kinew says since being elected, his government has been hiring more conservation officers, and he says these will be redeployed from a number of locations to the border.
Conservation officers are being taken from Virden, Boissevain, Manitou, Steinbach, Sprague, and Winnipeg. And as part of the work that they do, in which they would be doing conservation work on a given day, they will also be present along the southern border.
Kinew says if officers see anything illegal, they'll inform the RCMP and Canada Border Services. He hopes the move helps to send the message that Manitoba is doing its part to secure the border. The extension of the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire over the weekend means the Israeli military will stay on the ground in southern Lebanon at least until the middle of next month. And for many people in the area, it means another delay in returning to their communities. Mia Alberti explains.
The decision to extend the ceasefire until February 18th has angered many in Lebanon who accuse Israel of a land grab. Some locals at the borders say they don't accept the ceasefire extension and they are prepared to face the Israeli army again. In Beirut, Hezbollah supporters celebrated those who pushed the Israeli army out of their land on Sunday. Pro-Hezbollah sentiment is expected to grow the longer the Israeli army stays in southern Lebanon. It will be a crucial test for the newly elected administration, the first in years to distance itself from Hezbollah. Mia Alberti for CBC News, Beirut.
And finally, Radio Canada has learned the Prime Minister is planning to fill 10 vacancies in the Canadian Senate before he retires in March. The move would allow Justin Trudeau to leave a mark on Parliament for years to come. The unelected legislatures are able to sit in the upper chamber until the age of 75. The Prime Minister's office says the Advisory Board for Senate Appointments is working to propose candidates for all vacancies. The Senate was created to counterbalance representation by population in the House of Commons. The Senate has evolved from defending regional interests to giving voice to underrepresented groups like Indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, visible minorities, and women. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
That's CBC's Matt Humphrey. The time is 12:33 here on Radio Noon. Just checking in with that weather forecast. It is a balmy day across southern Manitoba. Still cold in the north, so we'll get into that as well. Winnipeg, at the moment at the Forks, it is +1. That's right, +1. Mainly cloudy today, 30% chance of flurries this afternoon. Wind northwest 30, gusting to 50, a high of 0, so we have surpassed that. Wind chill -11 this afternoon. Tonight in Winnipeg, mainly cloudy skies with snow beginning after midnight, wind becoming southwest 30, gusting to 50 after midnight. So we could see some blowing snow. We are looking at a wind chill of minus 16 overnight. In Brandon, currently minus 2 degrees, mostly cloudy. We'll see a 30% chance of flurries this afternoon in Brandon. Wind northwest 30, gusting to 50, a high of 0, and a wind chill of minus 11 this afternoon in Brandon. Overnight in Brandon, mainly cloudy skies and snow beginning after midnight with that wind as well. In Thompson, currently minus 16 degrees. With the wind chill, it could feel more like minus 28. Mainly sunny at the moment. Risk of frostbite with those temperatures in Thompson. Tonight in Thompson, becoming cloudy this evening and then snow. Could amount to 5 to 10 centimeters. Wind up to 15 kilometers an hour. A temperature holding steady overnight near minus 18 with that wind chill near minus 24. Well, it is time now for our afternoon call-in conversation, and it's about something I think a lot of us think about, or at least see on our bank statements every month. Do you think streaming services like Netflix or Disney Plus or Crave are worth the cost? We're asking this now because Netflix just bumped up its rates for Canadian subscribers. The standard plan with ads will go up by $2, and premium, so that's without ads, will jump by $3 to $23.99 a month. We want to know, do you think it's worth it? Or do the climbing costs make you want to pull the plug on those subscriptions? You can call us at 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Or send us a text message at 204-588-7355. Joining us is Bill Brio, a Toronto-based TV critic. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Hi, thanks for having me, Chloe.
So what accounts for the rising cost?
Well, according to Forbes magazine, there's life has 3 constants now: death, taxes, and rising Netflix prices. So that's where we're at. It's basically, television's just a very expensive business. Streaming, is just costly. For Netflix in particular, they're very aggressive in their spend. In order to have Netflix originals, they spend, according to some reports, as much as $17 billion a year creating new programs. So, they're always pushing to see if they can get a few more dollars from their subscribers.
And their premium fee is now, looking at some, in comparison, it's one of the highest out there at $23.99. Crave for premium is close to $22. Disney Plus $15.99. Amazon Prime $15.99. Apple TV is $12.99. I could go on and on. There's a lot of options out there. But they've raised costs before. They got rid of password sharing, Netflix, back in 2023. But people keep subscribing. Why are they so confident that they won't lose subscribers with changes like this?
I think part of it, they're just betting that many of us, will complain on social media about the cost. And then when the month flips around, we think, well, it's $2 more or $3 more. And we sort of grit our teeth and keep paying. So there's that. It's sort of a built-in churn that might not happen. They also provide, you can subscribe to their ad tier, which has less of a definition. The picture isn't in 4K, and you have to put up with the occasional ad. And they're much cheaper, $7.99, I think, although that's up $2 now. They just keep throwing so many shows at you. And I think that's the bottom line is, even if it costs $5 a month, if you're sitting there for half an hour trying to find something to watch on a service, one of these services, and you can't find anything, you're going to go, well, I'm getting rid of this. Why am I paying for this? But there's usually 3 or 4 or 5 shows you think, well, I would like to watch, say, they've got a new movie with Jamie Foxx up there back in action. And if you have kids at home, Exo Kitty, Squid Game is due this month. There's a documentary on Jerry Springer, WWE Raw. So they kind of are trying to get something for everybody in every household. And that's what they're banking on in terms of keeping you as a subscriber.
Now the company says this price increase is to, quote, reinvest to further improve Netflix. What's your impression of that statement? Or is it just to keep those shows running that they do produce in-house?
Yeah, it's like if you walked into the grocery store and your local grocer had a sign, we're trying to reinvest. That's why our prices are so high now. Or every time you got gas, well, we're reinvesting. But really, no, they're trying to make a profit. And it's a business, and it's a costly business, and it's a crazy business. At least with gas, people know what it's worth. You never know if you're going to have a hit. You can create and spend millions on a show, and it can be a bomb. So not everything works, and that's the business they're in, and they're just trying to hope that you'll just love more Squid Game that much that you're going to pay $23.99.
A lot of reboots happening over there.
Yeah.
If you want to join our conversation, you can call us at 204-780-0893 or text us at 204-588-7355. Do rising streaming service costs make you think twice? Have you already gotten rid, maybe, of a streaming service? Tell us why. Will an extra $2 or $3 cause you to cancel Netflix, or do you find it's worth it? You can even call us and tell us what shows you think are worth watching on any of the streaming programs, or are you getting your entertainment fix a different way? Call us 204-780-0893 or text us 204-588-7355. Now, Bill, a big question is, what impact is this likely to have on subscribers? Will they stick with Netflix when something like this happens in the past? Do we ever see like a slight dip in subscribers, or does it stay the same?
Oh, no. A couple of years ago, if you remember, a lot of people started to pull the plug, and Netflix, for the first time, they didn't show growth worldwide in their subscribers, and they lost like a third of their stock value overnight. And yeah, so that sort of was a signal that people had hit the ceiling. And I think all of these companies, Disney Plus and Apple and Amazon, I think they all felt, well, we'll get them at $9.95, and then we'll sneak it up to $20, and pretty soon $30, and we'll all be in Bentleys. But there is a limit, and the consumers have sent that message. That's why they're all offering cheaper tiers that have commercials, so that they can keep you as a subscriber, even though you're not paying the top buck. But it is very, very competitive. There's these fast channels now, free ad supported TV like Tubi and Pluto. They don't cost anything a month. CBC Gem has a lot of inventory, a lot of programs there. There are some options that don't break the bank. But if you just want those originals and the hot shows, and sometimes Paramount has them and sometimes Disney has them, do you need to have 4 services to keep on top of all of them, or can you just hop on and off? And I think that's where consumers are now.
I find just with the sheer amount of streaming services these days, I am always put in a pickle when friends are telling me about this great new show I have to watch, and then I don't have the streaming service, so I can't watch it. So there is this feeling of kind of missing out when you don't have the right streaming service for like the current hot show. Has all that competition, has it been better or worse for Netflix or Disney Plus? Like, is the competition helping costs, or is it harming them?
No, it's not helping. I mean, if you're jumping off, you're unplugging Netflix to go over to Paramount. Like right now, I really like, there's a show called Landman with Billy Bob Thornton. It's really an intriguing drama. That's on Paramount Plus. A few months ago, Apple TV there's all these great shows, Slow Horses and The Diplomat. So yeah, you're right, Chloe. If people are telling you, oh, have you seen the latest episode of Shrinking? And no, I don't have Crave. I don't have
But I
HBO.
really do want to watch that show. I've heard great things.
It is. It's fun. And it's one that, so I made sure I had that service when that was, and it's up there now. You can see every episode. Only Murders in the Building. I've got to have Disney Plus every August, September when that comes around. So you just, I think, unless you want to spend $200 a month on television, you have to be smart and strategic and jump on and off the services so that you're not spending all of the money all at once.
If you want to join our conversation, tell us which streaming services you're keeping, which ones you're maybe cutting due to increased prices. Call our listener line, 204-780-0893, or you can text us at 204-588-7355. Do these rising streaming service costs make you think twice, or are you getting your entertainment fix another way these days? Bill, I'm wondering, with rising prices and more ads, streaming is kind of starting to sound a lot like traditional cable.
Yeah. It does.
Would it be cheaper just to get traditional cable, or what are prices there like in comparison?
It's the double-edged sword is that you kind of, I really like Turner Classic Movies. I like watching the old great black and white classic films, but you got to have cable for that in Canada, and you can't just buy that on a separate service from somewhere. So yeah, then, if you want to watch sports, although a lot of the streaming services are now jumping into sports. If you want to watch hockey on Monday nights, you better have Prime Video.
That's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. So it gets very complicated and it gets expensive for sure. But yeah, you could just watch YouTube videos, really. I mean, a lot of people, there's some tremendous bottomless entertainment there. They have a pay tier as well. So there are ways of doing it that are far less expensive. It's just if you want to keep up with that hot show, you have to have one of the major streamers right now.
I am one of those people who is moving more and more towards YouTube these days. I have the channels that I keep up with weekly. Where are the trends headed? Do you think we're going to see more people looking for cheaper or free entertainment options, or do you think people are going to just keep paying and sticking with their streaming services?
It's to the point now where that slogan, Netflix and chill, means, Netflix or paying for heat in your house, like it's one or the other.
Or be chilly. Yes.
Right. So that's the dilemma. At some point, it shouldn't cost more than food or heat. And that's where we're inching up towards. So, yeah, it's going to have an impact, I think. That's a lot of money, almost $25 a month. So there better be great stuff on there, right? And isn't always. And that's why I say, yes, you're right. People will be looking at cheaper options and already have been, pulling the plug here and there. But I do think, there's just some shows you just want to see. And Chloe, that ultimately, I think, is what will happen. Whoever comes up with a service where you could just buy the show, you're not really buying a streaming service or a whole catalog or inventory. You just want Only Murders. You just want Shrinking or Landman or whatever it happens to be. So there's got to be a way at some point where you can just maybe buy that.
I will admit I have joined, taken a free subscription, a free 7 days, so I can just watch a single show and then canceled. So I think you're onto something there. Bill, Thank you so much for joining us and providing your perspective. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Chloe, anytime.
Bill Brio is a TV critic and writer. His podcast is called Brio. That's Brioux. TV, Brio TV, the podcast. Just search for that. And we reached him in Toronto.
There's flowers on the table, a card that says I love you. The dishes are done, dinner is made, and the table set nicely for two. I wish this was the first time I've seen a setting like this, but I've seen it before. I know the drill, and I know that I must resist. 'Cause you're only nice and I'm leaving, and that's not fair to me. You say the right things and pull me back in, then it's back to the same damn things. And I admit that it worked for a while now, but I can't keep doing this to me. 'Cause you're only nice and I'm leaving, but that's not enough for me. You say, darling, I'm sorry. I swear this time I'll change. And you give me that look, take my hands and promise it won't be the same. Part of me wants to believe you more than I'd like to admit, but I can't keep believing the same things over and over again. 'Cause you're only nice and I'm leaving, and that's not fair to me. You say the right things and pull me back in, then it's back to the same damn things. And I admit that it worked for a while now, but I can't keep doing this to me. 'Cause you're only nice and I'm leaving, but that's not enough for me. Yeah, you're only nice and I'm leaving, but this time I choose me.
Off her upcoming album, Breathe, that was You're Only Nice When I'm Leaving from Jade Turner. Thanks for tuning in to Radio Noon. I'm Chloe Friesen. Well, in this time of economic uncertainty, freeing up some extra cash might not be a bad idea. Many of us might have one form of currency in the house that we're not even aware of. And it might give new meaning to the idea of cold, hard cash. Here's CBC's Jennifer Keane.
Lindsay Harrington likes to stock up on food when it's on sale and toss it in the deep freeze. But she used to lose track of what was in there.
I found that, my freezer was just full of things that I never got around to eating, whether I was saving them for special occasions or I just forgot about some random block of soup.
So a couple of years ago, she challenged herself. What if she bought no groceries for the month of January and just ate what was in the freezer and pantry?
I do like to have cream or milk in my coffee, but Newfoundlanders love canned milk, like carnation milk. So I do have a couple of cans of that kind of on the side.
She calls it No Grow, No Groceries, January. She's doing it again this year, and she says it's not as hard as you think. In fact, the first week is usually pretty easy.
I still have all of my Christmas stocking chocolate and lots of goodies left over from the holidays, those frozen appetizers that everybody stocks up on.
But by the middle of the month, the fresh fruit and veggies are gone, and by week 4, things get weird.
I remember one year I was like, oh my God, what can I even make? And I was looking and I ended up making a soup out of just cans of V8 and navy beans. And I was like, I guess this is my life.
If you do a quick Google search, you'll find all kinds of people doing this.
But we're going to start by showing what I've got on top, and then we'll get into...
Some call it the pantry challenge or the extreme freezer clean out.
I've got some stir-fry vegetables.
And there's a reason people are finding ways to make their food bill go further.
Food prices have been top of mind for a lot of households, especially in the past few years.
Amanda Norris is a senior economist with Farm Credit Canada.
Since 2020, we saw food inflation increase about 24%. And when we break it down by food category, things like meat products and bakery and cereal over those 5 years experienced a larger increase.
One way to cut down on costs is to cut down on waste. We throw out a lot. Paul Vanderwerf, an adjunct professor at the University of Western Ontario, conducted a study of 200 Canadian homes. For weeks, his team rummaged through their garbage.
It's not super glorious work, but it does provide interesting and real sort of evidence-based data.
Every week, he found the average household tossed about 3 kilos of food. And that's money down the drain.
When we look at it from a dollar perspective, the work that I did fairly conservatively suggested that about $700 a year was wasted. Others have estimated that it's $1,800 a year. So somewhere, $700 to $1,800, so like at least $1,000 a year is just wasted.
Lindsay Harrington says cleaning out the pantry once a year means she saves hundreds of dollars, and she doesn't waste food. But when it comes to the deep, dark corners of her deep freeze, even Lindsay has her limits.
Some things I just never know what they are. Like, I didn't label them before I put them in the freezer, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. So, and even when you thaw it out, I'm like, I still don't know what this is. I'm not that adventurous an eater, so I don't eat those.
For the cost of living, I'm Jennifer Keane.
For more stories on how money shapes our lives in ways big and small, check out the Cost of Living podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can catch the show tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. right here on CBC Radio 1. Thanks for tuning in to Radio Noon. I'm Chloe Friesen, and the 67th Grammy Awards are less than a week away. Manitoba's Rhonda Head is among this year's nominees. The Opaskwayak Cree Nation singer-songwriter got the nod for her contributions to the Antonia Vergara's album The Fury, which was nominated for Best Contemporary Blues Album. From the album, this is Rhonda Head and Antonia Vergara with Muse of Midnight.
Just a little closer.
Like smoke within the dim lit room. Her presence gets mystic, lingering through. With the flick of her hair and a sultry smile, she's the muse of my life in her own beguiling style. Voices a whisper in the silence too.
Featured on the Grammy-nominated album The Fury, that's Opaskwayak Cree Nation's Rhonda Head and Antonia Vergara with Muse of Midnight. The 67th Grammy Awards takes place on February 2nd, and we will be rooting for Rhonda Head. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. The show is coming to a close, but there is lots more to listen to here on CBC Radio 1 coming up, including Up to Speed, hosted by Faith Fundal. And Faith joins me now for a little preview.
Chloe, good afternoon. We're going to hear more from a first-time author of a book called A Shy Girl's Sobriety Guide. After 10 years of sobriety, the first-time author documents her journey overcoming addictions. Talking about talking about how she did this as a shy girl and what it all means for her. You heard on your program as well changes to how the conservation officers in Manitoba will be addressing the border plan that Wabkanu has talked about. We'll hear from the union, the Manitoba Government Employees Union, about that plan. They have questions about it, so we'll hear more from Kyle Ross.
Thank you very much, Faith. Lots to come on Up to Speed. Thanks for tuning into Radio Noon. Thank you to our tech, Dylan Longhurst, our show director, Sierra Sanders. Producer of Radio Noon is Wendy Parker, and in charge of the YouTube live stream, Kevin Nipatebo. There's that wave from Kevin. I'm Chloe Friesen. Had a lovely time with you this afternoon. Coming up on CBC Radio 1, it's The Next Chapter.